independent judiciary, underpinned by constitutional safeguards and protected by clear separation of powers, ensures that the management of public finances is not left to unchecked discretion, but is bound by clear legal frameworks and subjected to impartial oversight. Where judicial independence is compromised, courts become vulnerable to political influence. Fiscal rules are bypassed, public borrowing escapes scrutiny, and public confidence collapses. That is why all across Africa, the African Development Bank has helped to place legal and judicial reforms at the center of all of our work on governance and public financial support. This is not just a policy on paper, it is impact in motion. Let me cite a few examples to make this point. In Liberia, after years of civil conflict, the African Development Bank helped to restore and equip commercial court infrastructure, digitize court systems, train judges in public finance and contract law, restoring the credibility of legal institutions and supporting fiscal oversight. In the Gambia, the bank supported reforms, modernized judicial operations and public financial management, increasing development budget execution significantly by 15%. In Mali, despite ongoing fragility, the bank helped to deploy mobile courts, train legal officers to resolve over 12,000 disputes. Many, of course, are related to land and other forms of fiscal issues that preserves the livelihoods and, of course, reduces conflict. In South Tome and Principe, a very small country, we provided technical support for the enactment of new arbitration laws aligned with international best practices, unlocking renewed investor interest in fisheries, tourism, ensuring dispute resolution frameworks. For your neighbor here in South Sudan, we supported the judicial and the commercial and judicial laws were drafted and adopted with our support, while over 150 judges have been trained, laying for them a strong foundation for investor trust, legal certainty in one of Africa's newest nations. And in Togo, the African Development Bank support contract enforcement time has dropped by 25% due to reforms in the judicial digitalization, while boosting confidence of local businesses and foreign investors. Now, let me turn to the last point that I want to make: improving access to justice. One cannot speak meaningfully about constitutionalism, the rule of law, and investment in Africa without addressing the foundational issue of access to justice and fair compensation. These are the very conditions that foster public trust and build confidence of investors to commit capital. When justice is accessible, compensation is fair, development becomes inclusive, governance and legitimacy, economic growth becomes truly sustainable. At the African Development Bank, we hold a simple but profound conviction. Development must be anchored in fairness, justice, and the protection of human dignity. Infrastructure and investment alone are not enough. We must ensure that every person impacted by our projects is treated with equity, dignity, and respect. And that is why the African Development Bank enforces a compensation policy that goes beyond formal land ownership. All across Africa, ladies and gentlemen, countless communities live and work on land under customary law or tenure, land not reflected in formal registries, but it's land upon which their entire livelihoods depend. The bank's position on this is very, very clear, and it is unequivocal. Whether or not a community holds a title deed, they are entitled to just and fair compensation. This is not theoretical. Right here in Kenya, during the construction of vital roles in all these projects that I've mentioned to you. And I can just discuss a few of them before I proceed. Look, the bank has done a lot of projects that have affected people and for which we actually work with the government well to do it. I mentioned to you the Tika Road. You have the road that is here, Bagamayo, that goes all to Horogoro, all the way to Malini. You have the Menandai Park project. You have the Lake Turkana Park project. You have the last mile connectivity project, which actually connects poor people, small households, small businesses to the grid. And when we started that under President Kenyatta, also with President Ruto, you know, I think your Minister of Energy was a guy called Qatar. Somebody, huh? Qatar, yeah. Yeah, Charles Qatar, yeah. And we went to the Rift Valley to see one of these projects. Through that project, the last mile connectivity project, the percentage of Kenyans that were connected to electricity went from 41% to over 74%. And in numbers, that's about 2.4 million to about 9.7 million people. But I want to talk to you about my experience with Cabinet Secretary Kitcher. Yeah, Kitcher. So essentially the way it worked was we paid for small households, poor households, for the cost of connecting themselves to the grid. So the problem was not the grid, it's the connection to the grid. It's what self-select themselves away from it because they can't pay. And so we paid for it. So I went to one of the villages with Minister Keter, Cabinet Secretary Keter, and we were walking there. And my wife's name is Grace. Okay. That's my Grace. And in fact, I can't do anything live without Grace. Both Graces, that up and the one at home. Amazing Grace, I guess. But as we were walking there, the lady in front of us, her name is Grace. Not my Grace, but the grace of that village, I guess. And Minister, Cabinet Secretary Keter was asking her, do you know that it's the African Development Bank that finances this project? And by the way, I was talking to the President of the Ambo, and also they were talking about the Tika Road, and people thought it was done by the Chinese, so it was financed by the African Development Bank. The roads that come here, you came through here, it's all financed by the African Development Bank. The Outer Ring Road is financed by the African Development Bank. The Tagway water supply project is done by the African Development Bank. The Kenyan Urban Water Treatment Project is funded by the African Development Bank. And the list goes on. But we don't put our billboards on things. But I was talking to, I got an advice, a free legal advice from Mohammed, was one of the lawyers that I should start putting that. No, actually, yeah, right here. What's the name? Yeah, the chairman of the Senate Council gave me free legal advice that to be advertising on our behalf many of this project. But anyway, we were going, and Keter asked, do you know that it's the African Development Bank that financed this project? She says, that was great. I do not know the African Development Bank. I said, do you know that the president of African Development Bank, Additional, is the one that made this possible? I said, I do not know Additional. All I know is that we once were in darkness, and now we have light. And that's what development really is about the people when they can say that. So people recognize the guy important behind that. So. In Uganda, and by the way, about compensation, I think it's very, I was just in Addis Ababa, and I was talking to some of the Leonard French here. They are building Bishoptu Airport, which we have been mandated in arrangement for $8 billion, raising $8 billion for them. That airport will have 60,000 million passengers per year. By 22nd phase, it will go to 110 million passengers per year. Larger than many airports. In fact, it will be one of the largest airports and city in Africa, that we're talking about. So when you go to that kind of a project, sitting on 4,000 hectares, you have to displace people, right? But commercial Ethiopian Airlines did, and the government did an incredible thing. They actually took care of all the 2,800 households well ahead of time. And guess what they did? They gave every household a villa. And then they gave them irrigation systems, mechanized systems, agro-processing zones, and Ethiopia Airlines put in $350 million to support their livelihoods. That's how we should be doing things. So of course, I said to them that these are no longer project-affected people. These are project-supported people. So some people will be asking them, how come the cadastral survey left out, I want a villa too, so put me in this project. And that's the kind of thing that we want to see. In Uganda, through our support, informal urban settlers affected by development projects, they received resettlement support, legal protection, and means to rebuild their lives. In Cote d'Ivoire, displaced farmers were compensated not just for their land, but for future income losses and supported with access to other forms of livelihood. These, dear friends, are tangible demonstrations of the rule of law in action, where fairness is not just promised, but delivered. But compensation alone is not enough. Access to justice itself is a fundamental right. That's why the African Development Bank invests in modernizing court registries, digitizing legal frameworks, expanding digital literacy through online platforms and outreach, ensuring that even the most marginalized communities understand and can claim their rights. In parallel, we advocate for the provision and the institutionalization of pro bono services in national bar associations. Justice must never be a privilege. It must be a guarantee for all. Through grievances redress systems embedded in our projects, we are seeing Tanzania, Ethiopia, and others ensure that individuals that are facing all manner of challenges, they can file their complaints, they can do that timely with independent mediation. These systems allow justice to be delivered not in theory, but in real time, at the community level, with procedural integrity and respect for human dignity. This integrated approach, fair compensation, accessible legal systems, digitized law, legal aid, robust governance of grievance systems bring the principles of constitutionalism and the rule of law into the everyday lives of African citizens. It transforms development from a top-down transaction into a participatory and accountable process. One area, as I close, that is critical for social justice and participation is improving land ownership laws to give farmers full title deeds for their lands that can act as collateral to access finance. And most importantly, laws should be changed to ensure that women have secure property rights all across Africa. No nation can develop without its women. And no bird can fly in one way. It's not just about what's right, it's about equity, fairness, and justice. Because we know this truth. Justice is not a byproduct of development. It is the foundation of development. To conclude, distinguished learned friends, I guess I can call myself a learned friend because I'm your friend. And I hope I'm learned. In this hall today, right before me, are the guardians of Kenya's promise. The stewards of Africa's destiny. Courts and contracts. Public finance and governance. Digital trust. Environmental and social governance. Justice and economic development. These are living systems that depend on you, your judgment, your voice, your integrity, and daily commitment to uphold the law and defend the public good. We must collectively strengthen constitutionalism, insist on accountability in the use of public funds, and strengthen the legal system and the judiciary. We must champion the environment, sustainability, and governance principles, ensure that courts have suitable quality infrastructure, digitize our courts, build digital trust, and reform and uphold the ethics of the legal profession. As we do this, my friends, while strengthening a just, fair, and independent and incorruptible judiciary, the benefits for societies will be immense across the continent. Africa will attract the capital that it needs. Businesses will flourish in trust. Justice will cease to be a privilege and become a right delivered to all. And development will no longer be a distant promise, but a daily reality in the lives of people. And this will be true not only for Kenya, but for all of Africa. When Africa stands for the rule of law, the world will stand with Africa. Let us make a choice that history will record and that generations will remember. Kenya is watching. Africa is waiting. The future is calling. And it is you, the lawyers, the judges, and the arbitrators who must answer that particular call. And I want to say that if you look at life itself, God has given us oxygen for a given period of time. Whether you like it or not, that oxygen will come to them. But I do hope that by doing the right things, that we will have the confidence the day that our own oxygen expires and we stand before a different court, and that is a court in heaven. Regardless of where you are, there will be a judgment, that we can do so, that we have done the right thing. We have issued judgments not just in favor of the rich, and that we have not forgotten the poor, and that we have done what is right before God and before man in good conscience. That will be the kind of court to be, because you can never be sent to jail. Thank you very much. It's so nice to be here. Asante sana.
Please, much more. Please, much more. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Adesina. I have to take 1 minute pause just to digest. But I need longer than that. Ladies and gentlemen, I said two things. Listening to Dr. Adesina, there are two things that come to mind. First and foremost, a leader, whether of a country or an institution, must espouse 4 areas of leadership. That leader must inspire, must influence, must impact, but overall must lead with integrity. Is that correct?
Yes.
Finally, a leader is not about a title. I'm a president, I'm a member of parliament, I'm a senator, I'm XYZ, I'm an MCA. A leader must not only carry the bag of leadership, but also must remember to carry the baggage of leadership. The bag is the position. The baggage is what you do with that position. Today, listening to Dr. Desina, it is quite clear that he not only carried the bag of leadership, but the baggage, because the projects that he has implemented through the bank in the continent have been impactful, they have inspired, and they have influenced, but they have been done with integrity. Thank you very much, Dr. Desina. Thank you very much. Just to confirm that the Law Society is represented in the bank through myself as the chair of one of the tribunals that foster transparency in the bank. I'm going to allow a couple of questions and comments, but please make sure you just have one bite. Don't have two bites, one question. And we'll do this in 10 to 15 minutes and then we'll close. The first person, my eyes are taking me down there. Microphones, please just put them across every row so that then we can conclude this exercise expeditiously.
Good afternoon, Daktari. My name is Muyesu from Turkana, a part of this country. Just a comment. I associate myself with the observations of Professor Francis Oyama, Darona Kemoglu, and Dr. Kalonzo, all of which say that socio-economic development is a precursor to a strong liberal democracy, and not the other way around. In other words, in the absence of good, strong socio-economic development, we cannot have a thriving liberal democracy. And part reason why our democracy struggles in this age is because of the fact that we remain undeveloped, we are highly stratified, we are highly differentiated. Ours is a rural agrarian economy, and we are not very exposed. So, do you agree with those observations? And if at all, I think it's perhaps time you let many of our scholars here understand that it is development first and then democracy, and the other way around. We are here because I put the horse before the cart.
Thank you.
For the horse. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Next question. Next to you there.
Thank you very much for that wonderful presentation. But I was very much stressed by the last slide, where a dollar was lying on the continent of Africa. In that, question is very simple. How can we de-dollarize the economies of Africa?
Thank you. Thank you. Next. We take 5 and then 5. Yes, there and then here. Yeah. Down, back there and then here. Ogada, the next one will be that one. Yeah, please proceed.
My name is Rick Motoki, and thank you very much for that insightful presentation. Listening very carefully. I've seen that the vision for the African Development Bank for the next 10 years is a prosperous, resilient, and integrated Africa. I've seen that the bank 54 African states as members. And we have seen through the presentation all the efforts that the bank has undertaken to help rule of law in those countries. My question is this. What efforts is the bank privy of or undertaking to help regional integration across Africa with the aim of perhaps one day having a common market in Africa, and perhaps even a single currency like the euro, because obviously the advantages of such a union of the economies and currency are evident for all to see.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Good afternoon. My name is Salma Ochin. Allow me to call you Your Excellency by all standards. And looking at your resume, your very, very rich resume. And I believe as the African Development Bank, you have a CSR component under within the bank, and today you are addressing advocates. And we seated here, the bare minimum qualification that we have is a degree, an LLB degree. And I am keen at mentorship of the young lawyers. You have talked and addressed the issues of AI that we cannot run away from in the recent times that we are in. And then in the expansion of the practice across the board. Under the bank CSR, are there exchange programs curtailed specifically for advocates or the young upcoming advocates who are looking up to you and who will one day want to say that, I got this because of courtesy of the African
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Let's do this. We'll take 5 more, then we close, right?
Yes.
Is that democracy?
Yes.
Now it's already decided yes. Will we take 5 and we close?
Yes.
Okay. Good. Yeah.
Thank you very much, our presenter. My name is Faith Waigwa. One concern about development partners financing African governments is on an issue of public procurement. So the financing agreement, which is between AFDB and the government of Kenya, is governed perhaps by regulations or laws that will govern an international space. However, when you escalate that downwards, where that financing is supposed to identify a contractor, and that contractor then performs the works, goods, and services that are required out of the financing, we see a situation where the laws of Kenya or the laws of the African countries are then side-tracked or set aside so that the bank itself ends up getting involved in getting the contractor. And what I'm concerned about is, once you finance as a bank, it is done in dollars. Then the contractor is a foreigner who operates from outside the country, perhaps. And again, they're going to be paid by dollars. And they're going to be paid in an account that is outside the country. So the only benefit Kenyans get is that product, like the road. But the circulation of the money is outside. So that's my concern in terms of procurement. Why don't you allow them, all procurements, as long as they are Kenyan procurements, be governed by the procurement laws?
Thank you for that.
Okay.
Thank you. Dr. Kimwana, Professor Kimwana, I think I've seen his hand up. Professor Kimwana, former Governor Makwene. I chaired the commission in the county when the county damage was being resolved. and I ordered the solution. Yes, Professor.
I want to say, first of all, thank you, because Kwale was one of the ADB projects. Thank you for that. It's ongoing. But the question is, listening to you, and this is not the first time to listen to you, you actually speak as if you are doing what the African Union should be doing. And so the direct question is, how do you influence, through all what you have told us, these 54 governments to, accede to rule of law, to constitutionalism, to those good practices, so that you are also supplying soft infrastructure, not just hard infrastructure? Thank you very much, and we wish you well.
Thank you so much. We are very impressed by the presentation. My question is about the sovereign debt. Is it a preserve of the executive when procuring these sovereign debts? And what is the bank doing to expand the involvement of the people and the information regarding sovereign debt? Because in this country, sovereign debt is only, in my view, an exclusive of the executive.
That one I can answer. I chair a tribunal that facilitates access to information. But I'm sure Doctor will have a say on it.
Thank you. My name is Faith Besa. from the Public-Private Partnership Directorate. And I just wanted to compliment Dr. Adisila. And just mine is a compliment that indeed we are working well with the African Legal Support Facility. And we want to assure you that by the end of this financial year, we are working with the Office of the Attorney General to ratify the agreement. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Desina, for a wonderful presentation. There is an inherent paradox in this idea of development in African countries, where to attract the foreign countries we insist on sanctity of contract, and capital defines the dispute resolution clause. It defines where they are going to determine any dispute about the contract. And our countries, when they are looking for this lending, they are ready. Our institutions are ready to sign above the dotted line with those dispute resolution contracts. And you've talked about asymmetrical bargaining power. But on the other hand, there is a question of odious debt. Once they have signed with this asymmetrical bargaining power, without the people in those countries, including in Kenya, being very aware of the content of these financing agreements, when eventually it is the time to pay, it is a taxpayer who is now required to pay. So you have indicated that the African Development Bank has been involved in the negotiation of some of these odious debts. Could you tell us what is your experience with trying to develop a legal principle that odious debt, whether it is sovereign or it is by institutions within a country, that goes against the principles of fairness, that is infected by serious corruption, shall not be payable? Could you tell us what has been the outcome?
Thank you. So one more, then we close. All right? Yeah, back there.
Oh, okay. Oh, thank you. Director Moringi, Chair of Council.
Okay, Chairman. Okay, fine. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Former Governor also.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So, Mr. President, you've referred to credit rating several times in your speech. And of course, there is the data from UNDP showing that Africa could be paying as much as $75 billion more per year because we are poorly rated. And the blame going perhaps to Western-based rating agencies. So the more direct question, of course, is what could the bank do? What is the bank doing to build credit rating in Africa by Africans on its own merit?
Thank you. Thank you. Last one.
Thank you so much, Senior and Mr. President, for that, in my view, very thought-provoking presentation. Two questions. I think we all agree that...
I only agreed one, so stick to one. Proceed.
Democracy is a work in progress in Africa, and sometimes it has failed. But my question is, what are we doing to realize the dream of the likes of Muammar Gaddafi, that is, use our mineral resources to back up one currency for Africa? Other jurisdictions have done it, and I think in a way it has led to their development. What are we doing? And should we continue to work with institutions such as the World Bank and EMF that we know have been predatory in nature and have benefited from our resources? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Adesina. The stage is yours now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me start with the last question and I work my way up. on the issue of natural resources and what you said about backing currencies. And I want to say about two different things about this. First, I don't believe in natural resource-backed loans, because a lot of natural resource-backed loans that you have in Africa are actually quite non-transparent, they're not inclusive, you don't know what the terms are. Countries negotiate off things that are not necessarily in their own interest. And sometimes you have a country, for example, uses their oil, your gas, your minerals, your metals to back a particular loan, and then you're still paying 8, 9, 10% interest as a sovereign when actually the sovereign cannot default. And so what is the point of that? In some cases, you set up a special purpose vehicle that you give your oil to, and the oil prices go up, they make the money, you don't. And so all I just want to say is that we have to be very careful with natural resource-backed loans. In most cases, they're very non-transparent, and they are not very inclusive, and they are not necessarily in the interest of the countries. And if I might just make a comment here about the issue that is with us today with respect to what you get with carbon pricing. And so you have a situation today where a lot of countries want to do carbon offsets. And so they come to Africa and they take over vast amounts of lands in Africa. Now, if you wanted to do a carbon offset, for example, and you are say in Europe, the emission trading standard is such that if you have to come to Africa, you know what it is? It can go between $1 and $3 per ton. And so you have a lot of countries that have come to Africa that are buying up vast amounts of lands. And for those of you that will remember in 2008, where we had the global food crisis, there were some countries that were taking over land to grow food for their countries out of Africa and export it back. So it was all called a land grab situation. So I just think what we have today is carbon grab situation because of lack of proper information. Secondly, the price is nothing, so we're getting nothing. Second is that the countries lose the right over their own land, so you're losing your sovereignty over their lands. Third, under environmental law globally, you can no longer use the carbon under that land as part of your own independently determined national contributions on that COP agreement. You can't, because it no longer belongs to you. And finally, as an economist, if the way you measure the wealth of nations is done by GDP, the value of goods and services that an economy produces. But who says that's the right measure? Because it doesn't tell you anything about the negative externalities of that production process. And so others are getting very rich, and we are paying the consequence in terms of climate change, right? Now, what I want to say about this particular issue is that we are wealthy in terms of carbon, forest, biodiversity. Take for example, the Congo Basin area is the second largest carbon lungs in the world after the Amazon. And so what does Africa get from that? Nothing. We just get applause for helping to sequester carbon and all that. Look, Africa cannot afford to be greenly poor. Africa has to be greenly rich. And therefore, that's why I have championed globally that the GDP of nations in Africa should be redone to take into consideration the natural capital of wealth of Africa, including that in your GDP as a green GDP, whether it's the value of your forest, your biodiversity, the value of all the other natural assets that you have. So your debt to GDP ratio, which is a measure of whether your debt is sustainable or not, goes down. And therefore you can actually borrow more to do more. And so, Africa cannot be green rich and cash poor. It's point I made. And so this issue is very important. We are already working on it. We are training and supporting African statistical bureaus to begin to have new tools and ways in which they can recompute the GDP of Africa, taking into consideration the natural capital stock that we have. So So that's my point with regard to the issue. And so if that happens, your currencies will become much stronger, actually, because you have a lot more wealth as a nation. Now, the other one about the debt credit rating agency, I think it's from the governor or somebody. Yeah. Yeah, from which?
From the chief taxman.
Oh, chief taxman. So, there is no doubt that there is risk, but I think that when it comes to Africa, it's more of risk, a lot more of risk perception than the real risk of investing in Africa. Don't believe me, believe the data. Now, Moody's Analytics did an assessment of the default on infrastructure in Africa, all over the world, over the last 14 years, in a 14-year period. What did they find? The default rate on infrastructure debt in Africa is 1.9%. The default rate in North America is 6.6%. The one in Latin America is 10.4%. In Eastern Europe is 12.5 or so percent. Western Europe and Western Asia are 4.4%. So what does that mean? That means that the default in Africa is not that high at all. And that is the data. It's not just about perception. But then, when you look at the cost of capital, the African countries, to raise capital is 3 to 5 times higher than in the areas they actually have higher default rates. So you take two countries, one in Latin America, one in Africa, both of them the same credit rating by the same credit rating agency. BB rating, the one in Africa raises the cost of capital by 300 basis points higher than the one in Latin America. Why? That is not backed by data. And so that is why we have been saying what you point to raise about the UNDP data, that in fact if you considered the African countries rated properly, they will not be paying back $75 billion that you are talking about in terms of excess debt payment. So I firmly believe that the global credit rating agencies need to begin to have better data, better persons, evaluate us better based on not just your opinion, but have a counterfactual. So if you go to a medical doctor to have a scan or something, that doctor, you have a right for a second opinion, right? To go to somebody else and ask them, is that what they say, is that correct? But African countries don't have a second opinion. And so that is why at the African Development Bank, I have championed, and I continue to push at the African Union for us to have an African credit rating agency, not a political institution, but a globally respected African rating agencies that will look at your market risk, your project risk, your political risk, counterparty risk, and all this risk, and assess you properly. And of course, that doesn't mean that all the global investors are suddenly going to be using the African Credit Rating Agency, but at least it gives you a comparison, right, of data points that they can be used between all those. So the simple point to your point is that we strongly support the establishment of the Africa Credit Rating Agency. President Ruto told me something about ratings. When there was a military coup in Nigeria Republic, he told me that Kenya's debt in terms of coupon payments went up. And when they asked them why, President Ruto said, we told them that this is Kenya. They said it's because of the coup in Niger. And they're going to pay, I think, 200 basis points more. And he said, the last time I checked in Kenya, Niger is not inside of Kenya. It's not even close to Kenya. That's how some of the rating agencies actually look at it. Once there is an event, it becomes something that's normalized all across the whole country. So that's the point I'm basically making there. On the issue of the dispute resolution and the asymmetry of bargaining power and odious debt and all of that, I think at the end of the day, the issue is making sure that debt is contracted transparently, and that you negotiate what's actually in your own interest. And to the point of the contract, I think the question came from here. I can see it. Yeah, okay. So the whole issue about the legal principles around this odious debt should not be payable. Well, if you get into a contract that you shouldn't get into a contract, why did you do it in the first place? So I think nations should take proper legal advice. And this is why I was making the case to you that you ought to be involved in your nations about the contractual obligations the nations are getting involved with, to be sure that the rates are in your interest. Those things actually and where the resolution, the dispute will be settled. Why is it always being done in France for the Francophone countries? Why is it always being done in the UK? Why is it always being done in New York? Why not in Africa? So that's why in my talk I was encouraging that we strengthen our arbitral systems so that many of these things can also be done right here back in our country. Faith, thank you very much. In terms of African Legal Support Facility, I think you were somewhere there. Thank you for the ratification of that agreement. We're grateful for that. On the sovereign debt, the role of the people. Well, I think my talk is very clear about that. National debt is not something to be contracted without consultation, because you are going to pay for it with your taxes today and well into the future. So there must be a process of prioritization, a process of consultation, a process that actually shows the people how the money is going to be used. You can't just be taking loan anyhow. How is it being used? How has it been used? Who's going to be accountable for that? How much are we going to pay? And what's the implication of that on taxes when you actually get too much debt that is not sustainable? So we shouldn't be just saying we are taking debt. That's one thing. But personally, I don't believe nations can develop just like that. And neither should they be. Nations should develop by the discipline of investments. We have a lot of investments. We have a lot of assets. The issue is, how do we interface global capital to unlock those assets for us? And how do we manage our assets? I think it's important, and when it comes to domestic resource mobilization, which is actually very, very important, tax to GDP ratio is what the IMF will tell you. Your tax to GDP ratio should be above 15%, and then you will grow. Well, here's the point. It's not the number. It's the tax administration. It's how the money actually gets used. We tend to tax people a lot because we think the nominal tax rates are quite low. But the other side of that is that tax are social contracts between people, citizens, and their societies. So if I am providing my own electricity, I'm digging a borehole, which in fact, by its nature, is an indication of market failure. And so I don't know why politicians always get videos to go show that they're digging boreholes. If I'm providing my own security and everything, well, I am a local government. Yeah. And so essentially what I'm saying is that government's failure or government inefficiencies in the provision of public services transfers the responsibility of the government to the citizens who now bear the higher cost. So it's not just your nominal tax rate. It is the implicit tax rate. And it's taxes that citizens are paying that's not reflected. So the citizens are paying a lot more than they should be paying. So the point I want to say is that don't just collect taxes. You have to make sure the taxes are used well to deliver what is a social contract with society. That's my view on this particular issue. On the AUC, well, I just checked out the comment. We work very closely with the AUC. I think the soft infrastructure point you raised is important. I'll tell you one thing about the bank. When I was elected president of the bank in 2015, I said the bank is an institution set up to go mobilize capital for Africa's development. We have Agenda 2063. And that Agenda 2063 is going to be it's in the future. But we have to have a high discount rate to bring many things to the present. And so I set up what's called the I-5s of the bank. Light up and power Africa, feed Africa, industrialize Africa, integrate Africa, and improve the quality of life of the people of Africa. And I align that completely with Agenda 2063 of the African Union to fast track that Agenda 2063. You know what has happened? In 10 years, those high fives impacted on the lives of 565 million people. From electricity to water to sanitation to agriculture to transport and all of that. So all I'm saying is that there's full alignment between us and the African Union. We must fast track the Agenda 2063. Everything good for Africa should not be in the future. It has to bring things faster for our population. On the issue of procurement, I think that Faith you raised, actually is the opposite of everything you said. Because we actually do not select companies, contractors. No. We use national systems, procurement systems. There are two types of procurement systems we use. Your point is a good one, but we don't do that. We have an international procurement systems which we have to open up globally. If you're taking particular things from a fund, which we call the African Development Fund, so it's always globally competitive. Now we also have particular things that are done at the country level. But regardless of the two, it's not the bank that chooses the contractor, it is you. We follow and you use the national procurement laws. In fact, the bank does not get involved in picking contractors at all. So if you have contractors that are performing, you should actually go deal with them, not the African Development Bank. We don't get involved in that. And so we respect national laws, national procurement laws, and that is how all contracts with the bank are actually done, not from the African Development. Just for clarity, it's not from the bank side. But having said that, I think there's always issues, Faith, about the issue of competitiveness. Sometimes if you use least cost procurement system, contractors of a particular country normally tend to get most of it. The question that is being raised is it enough just to talk about least cost procurement systems as opposed to life cycle cost? You know, if I have a least cost and it's a bad infrastructure, I still have to repair that infrastructure over time. So now we are having a conversation globally about whether we should shift from least cost production and procurement system to a full cost life cycle model for looking at procurement. So that's just for clarification, Faith, but it's a good point you raised. Yeah. Salma, I think on CSR, we were talking about mentorship. We have a program at the bank that is called Young Professional Programs. So if you want to join the Young Professional Program, the qualifications are as follows. You must have been working for 3 years. It's a great program. If you want to have an entry position at the bank, you can apply to the bank, and it's a competitive process. To get into that, you can actually get into the bank. And we have a number of young lawyers that are actually part of the young professional programs for the bank. So Faith, please see me or one of my staff while I walk out, and I'll be happy to connect you with those that can support you with that. But, you know, young lawyers are like young doctors or doctors. When they go to court and they see learned friends, learned, seniors like you, go to court, you've argued everything right, and yet you keep losing cases. Then they ask themselves, are they in the right profession? Why are they in Africa? Maybe they should go somewhere else. All I'm trying to say is that we cannot be letting our young brains just go outside of the continent just because we are not cleaning up our own systems. On the issue of regional integration, I was asked, what are we doing on regional integration? Yes, we support the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. In the last 10 years, we've done about, is that the question over there? Regional integration question? Oh, I thought you would. Yeah. Oh, right over there, okay, at the back. We support the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. In the last 10 years, we've done about more than $6.5 billion on integration infrastructure. That goes from power, it goes to highways, corridors, digital infrastructure, and all of that. That's one. Second, as I mentioned to you, let me give some examples. In East Africa, we are supporting the standard gauge rail that links Tanzania to DRC to Burundi. And that's about $3.5 billion that we're mobilizing capital for. That helps in regional integration. We're supporting ports, rail, airports. I just mentioned the case of Ethiopia to you. So these are all on regional integration. We are also supporting the laws of lines of credit, trade lines of credit for banks. We are also strongly supporting the development of capital markets across many countries by integrating the stock exchanges so that capital can flow, people can raise capital all across Africa. These are all part of it. So regional integration is at the core or what the African Development Bank does. On the issue of the dollars on the currencies for Africa, well, three things I would say. First, I personally do not believe that African countries should be developing or too dependent on aid. You see, if you have a walking stick and you're walking on it, and the walking stick keeps getting shorter and shorter, you keep moving forward. But that's not because you're making progress. You're about to fall. You cannot take aid and put it on your balance sheet. Why should benevolence is good, or benevolence is not an asset class, and why should that be on your balance sheet? If a country decides they don't want to do aid, well, so be it. Will you not develop without it? So I do believe that Africa should develop with pride. Africans should mobilize a lot more capital by themselves. They should use their resources more efficiently, and therefore you are not subject to conditionalities and whims and caprices of people. Or you can develop without having to depend on aid. The second thing I want to say is the importance of the African Economic Monetary Union, which we are working on with the African Union on this particular area. So the more you build regional trade, the more you are able to have better currencies, the more you can actually also trade in your local currencies that are much stronger on that. The first question was on the issue of socioeconomic development. Is that yes? Yeah. On the issue of socioeconomic development, whether it's development first or democracy first, whatever the theory is that you were saying. Well, let me say this. There is no development without a government. And I believe firmly that we've gotten it wrong by thinking government is a problem. Government is not the problem. Bad governance is the problem. Government, in my view, can play a very critical role of a market maker. There are so many missing institutions, market failure problems that governments can compensate. Why is it that government work elsewhere and not in a number of countries that I would not necessarily want to say? So all I want to say is that we need good government, accountable government, responsible government, zero corruption, make our continent, our countries a place that capital can move to, that capital can stay, that capital can grow because they trust that we're going to do the right things. I'll close with this. And we're having dinner yesterday with Honorable Justice and others, having a great debate, and Prof was there also with us in that debate. And one thing that I said was about the role of public service, the public sector. You know, the public sector, private capital will always move to where the rate of return on private capital is highest, by standard. But that's a necessary condition. It's not a sufficient condition. The necessary and sufficient condition for private capital to move is that private capital will move always to where the social capital stocks are high. Let me be clear. Social capital stocks, health, water, sanitation, education, social security, good infrastructure. Why do people take money out of Africa and go and put it in Switzerland? The rate of return that they are getting is negative, but people like to live there. So the point I'm making is that it's not just putting money in Africa. Let's make Africa a place where the owners of capital want to live. When you know you are making progress is when those that own capital come to you to live there. So we must make sure our public service are delivering quality. They move people from the private sector, they hire them and put them in the public sector. And they pay them more than they actually get in from the private sector. Why? Because they value the social capital stock of their country. So all I just want to say is that the problem is never government. It's bad government that is the problem. What we should be doing is turning our government into a market maker. That's how you will get faster development. Thank you very much.
I was conversing with a friend of mine sitting in here, and the conversation was that this was a master class, wasn't it? Yes. It was a master class, isn't it? Yes. Thank you very much, Dr. Desina. I think it's not within my mandate to pass a vote of thanks, because a president can only be thanked by another president. So, our president, please.
I ask all of you to please stand up and let's thank again our keynote speaker today for a very amazing keynote speech. Please. Please sit down. You know, when I was reading the CV, I started asking myself several questions of life. And you know, when you say we have brilliant people, I really am humbled that you're amongst us today and that you took the time. I will share, allow me to share your CV so that people can be inspired. So that when you think you're brilliant, you can reflect and ask yourself further questions. I am honored, and I want to ask Gumbo to stand up. Gumbo, please stand up. I want to thank, because in this conference we saw a lot of the hard work and a lot of support, particularly even from seniors. And Gumbo was one of them who told me, would you like the president of the African Development Bank to grace the annual conference? And he did not ask, and when I said we'd be honored, he immediately started working on it. He did not tell me it will cost this much to ensure he gets here. This will be the logistics. This will be the back and forth needed to be done. He did every single thing. He paid the cost, he facilitated to ensure that the president is amongst us today, and I'm really humbled by that level of support. Thank you very much. So today we cannot thank you enough. I'm inspired not only in terms of the speech and also rallying people together in terms of what is their role of ensuring we support the government, but also hold it accountable in terms of the funds that and the development projects that come to the country. When you share the experiences that you've had around Africa and also still leading at the front in the world, it humbles us to know that we can be part and parcel of the ecosystem to ensure that we make the country better, that we do not lose the amazing young brains looking for better opportunities outside instead of making the opportunities possible in our own country. I know our challenges in this country. The last time we had discussions about airports, it wasn't pretty. And I think the Law Society was heavily involved. But I hope that the next time we're hearing discussions about the airports, the African Development Bank will be involved. And we'll be hearing about amazing stories of how our country is going to be the major carrier in the region. And KQ will go back to being an actual pride of Africa. Lawyers play a very important part, and I think it's also important that we learn the importance of the ecosystem we play in public finance. And just the tip of the iceberg, I think we've heard of some of the opportunities. I think if you allow, you will introduce us to some of your local team that we can also learn and see how can we support, how can we work with the local team and ensure we build a lot more expertise, because I always believe in mentorship.
Can I just ask him to start
the Director General of the bank for
Eastern Africa is here.
So thank you very much for also bringing your tea. And so I think our members, lawyers, we are like sharks. So I hope you have seen it. Before even I introduce you, you'll be there. And so we are deeply honored, we are deeply grateful. I cannot say thank you enough for you coming to the Law Society of Kenya and gracing this momentous occasion. For me, it's my last annual conference. And so I want to say I've ended it with a bang. So, you know, part of this discourse was how can we make Africa the hub in terms of arbitration, and us drawing arbitration closer in terms of people looking at the country. And so none other than your friend this afternoon, today you are the front, your very good friend will be launching his book, and I want to invite Professor Gido Migai as he comes to the front. Our very own Professor Gido is a professor of public law at the University of Nairobi and a senior partner at Mohammed Migai, LLP. He was the Vice President of the London Court of International Arbitration, the Vice President of the United Nations Working Group on Issues of Human Rights and Transnational Cooperation and Other Business Enterprises. He previously served as the Commissioner for the former Constitution of Kenya Review Commission, a judge to the African Court of Human and People's Rights between 2008 and 2010, as the Chief Legal Advisor to the government and titular head as the Attorney General between August 2011 and March 2018. He is also a former Special Rapporteur on contemporary forms of racism, racial discrimination, xenophobia, and related intolerance between 2008 and 2011. He has broad international and domestic experience at dispute resolution, having represented Kenya as the Attorney General before the International Criminal Court at The Hague, serving as a member of the Permanent Court of Arbitration at The Hague. He has represented numerous parties at the Supreme Court of Kenya, the Supreme Court of Uganda, and other regional litigation and dispute resolution fora. He was conferred the rank of Senior Counsel by right by the President of the Republic of Kenya. Our very own Professor Gido Migai.
Madam President, all protocols observed, safe to recognize my learned and distinguished friend, the DBP, but having done that, I'm obliged to recognize my teacher, Professor Kibuda Kibwana. Then I stop there. Madam President thinks highly of me. This is not my book. I am the editor of the book. We first edited a book on arbitration more than 15 years ago. We thought of rewriting it, re-editing it, and it was hopelessly out of time. So what we have done is we have written a new book. And you will note the title of the book is a Handbook on Arbitration because it is not an academic book. It is not to contribute to jurisprudence. It is to guide arbitrators as they are working live. If you want to check how should I draft an order on interrogatories or discovery, it's a practical book. It is my great privilege to have edited with my younger, more distinguished, more energetic colleague, Professor Wayne Mutuma, who would have been here. Jackie? Okay. He was not able to be here. He had an urgent family commitment. So I am speaking for both of us. But let the record show that he did much more work because he's much more energetic. And I rode on his shoulders. Now, who are the other people involved in this project? Chapter 1, we had Professor Kariuki Moigwa, who wrote on the legal framework on arbitration. The arbitration agreement, we had Kamau Karori. The arbitration tribunal, we had John Ohaga. Applicable laws, we had Ms. Jackie Oyuyo. Conduct of arbitral proceedings, we had Professor Mutuma and his collaborators. Interim measures, we had my old teacher, Aaron Ringera. Award and decision, we had Jacqueline Wahenya. Recognition and enforcement was yours truly, but 70% of the work done by Jeffrey Mende. Courts and interest, we had David Onsare, who I welcome into writing in this area.
And Vice President Emeritus, our chief guest of today, the Honorable Director of Public Prosecutions, as well, will receive a copy courtesy of myself. The Senior Counsel Bar Chair, please come as we launch this book as well. And our very own Supreme Court Judge, Justice Lenaola. There's no gender balance. I ask for that Dr. Mercy Jeche, please come to the front. Our Vice Chair of the Senior Counsel Bar, Joyce Majiwa. Our host in the coast, allow me to dot, Natasha. And our Commonwealth Treasurer, Maria Beneka. I've been told now there's an issue of young lawyers. So young lawyers, Gloria, you can represent the young lawyers, and then of course our very own Gumbo, please join the front. I think the people selling books, you don't have to sell books. You're not distributing. You can distribute and note the number. Chair of Caucus.
Ladies and gentlemen, I will take 1 more minute with the permission of our President, just to mention that our members are writing good books. And I was asked to mention to you, one of our members, George Omwansa of Kenya, has written a book, The Modern Law Firm Management, Setting Up, Running and Winding Up. I have perused it and found it to be useful. I recommend it to
So we are not yet done. We have our closing ceremony, but before we close, I would like to invite our sponsor from Defenders Coalition, Mr. Maura, please. Mr. Kamau, please come to the front, which will be followed by Mr. Babu Owino. As Professor is signing the book, I am sure he'll ensure everyone gets a copy with your M-Pesa ready. But Mr. Babu Owino, be ready. In the meantime, can we have at the front our invited guests joining the chief guest? Professor Makau Mutua, please come to the front. Our Super Senator, Edwin Sifuna, please come to the front. Please settle down, we proceed.
Thank you, President of the Law Society of Kenya, distinguished members of the Law Society of Kenya, I thank you for the opportunity to stand in front of you. My name is Kalonzo. I'm team leader of the National Coalition of Human Rights Defenders, popularly known as the Defenders Coalition. I bring you greetings from the human rights defenders from across the country, but above all from the Eastern Horn of Africa region. I know that the majority of the people who have stood here as sponsors are the people who are mostly in the area of business, but I'm here to affirm our partnership with the Law Society of Kenya because we have continued to partner in many areas, particularly in the protection of the Constitution and to hold those in power, truth to power, and to hold those accountable, those in charge of various institutions. Our job is mostly to ensure that human rights defenders at the front line are defended and the work that they do is respected. I am here to appeal to you as members of the Law Society of Kenya to please be bold in defending the Constitution. As a member of civil society, I want to insist that it's not always easy that one can stand and speak truth to power, but I feel encouraged by the numbers here. I want to appeal to you to boldly defend those who courageously defend the Constitution. I want you to boldly defend those who demand better from those in power. And I also want to ask you to please remember that our Constitution that was fought for by most people arising in the room put in place a very critical chapter, which is the chapter around the protection of the rights of all people, that includes the protection of our right to protest. Because this is, and I insist this because that's when the marriage and partnership between the Law Society of Kenya and the Defenders Coalition has been firmed up. We insist that the people of Kenya have a constitutional duty, like all of you, to defend the Constitution, to do so, including group protests, when you do it peacefully. But I'm also here to pass a message from our members who feel that they have been blamed as people that are not doing the right thing. I want to appeal to you to tell you that human rights defenders and defending human rights is an act of patriotic duty. It is not criminal, and that people who engage in protecting or participating in protests are not. And I say this because I see my good friend, the Director of Public Prosecution. I want to appeal to you to recognize that people who engage in protests are not terrorists, and I want to insist are not terrorists because I do engage in protests and I've never ever engaged in terrorism. I'll never do that. So I appeal to you, like we participated and engaged with you before in your office, and we were able to recognize that human rights defenders that have been criminalized because of the work that they do, that their charges must be dropped, and you dropped them before. So we hopefully that we can continue engaging in this partnership. For the members present here, I have a specific appeal to make to you. I want to appeal to you to continue being the voice of justice, the voice of people, to be the dear partners of activists. I want to appeal to you to continue the journey that was started by senior counsels in the room that have inspired activism, that have inspired Kenyans to be the defenders of rights, and we continue to appreciate you. Finally, allow me to take this opportunity to thank the members of the Law Society of Kenya, the leadership of Faith of Thiago, that work with us tirelessly to ensure that we got a very special award called the Father Kaiser Human Rights Award for 2025 in recognition of our work. I wish to thank you and commit to continue partnership. Thank you.
Thank you very much for human rights defenders. Mheshimiwa Babu, the podium is yours. Make it brief and fast as the other team gets here so that we can go to the final session.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon. I almost started with Chidi Mantela until I've noticed the forum that I am in. Ladies and gentlemen, it is humbling to be in the company of legal minds. Legal minds who have shaped jurisprudence, legal minds who have upheld justice, and legal minds who have carried the torch of integrity in the profession. Ladies and gentlemen, as new advocates, we have arrived. We arrive with enthusiasm. We arrive with fresh ideas. And we arrive with yokes of responsibility resting on our shoulders. And we understand that this noble profession is not, the noble profession is more than just a career, but it is a calling. It is a calling to serve justice. It is a calling to defend the Constitution. And it is a calling to be the voice of the voiceless. As new advocates, we will carry ourselves with humility, curiosity, and courage. And to our mentors and seniors, we want to thank you very much for paving the way. And we want to tell you that we will continue learning and growing under your guidance, because we are here today because you have led by example. Otherwise, thank you, and to Excellency Kalonzo Musyoka, go ye and conquer the nation. My super senator, Edwin Sifuna, continue injecting with the syringe and the needle of a camel. To the President of the Republic of Kenya, you must respect the Constitution. Thank you and God bless you.
So we'll be giving our invited guests 5 to 10 minutes. We know we are the ones standing between people and their lunch, but it's also quite important to listen and hear the wisdom that you'll be sharing with us. Our first speaker will be Professor Makau Mutua, who is the former dean at SUNY Buffalo Law School, the State University of New York, where he's a distinguished professor and the Margaret Wong Professor, a title that succeeded his tenure at the Floyd H. and Hilda Hurst Faculty Scholar. He served as Dean from 2007 to 2014, has been a professor at Buffalo since 1996. He teaches human rights, international law, and international business transactions. He served as the chair of the Board of Advisors of the Rome-based International Development Law Organization, IDLO, and chair of the Board of Directors of Kenya Human Rights Commission. He's been a visiting professor at Harvard Law School and the University of Iowa College of Law. He's most known for his wit, his charm, and most importantly, currently, being the main advisor or being the main person holding the position that may see the victims of those who have suffered since 2017 seeing some glimmer of hope. The people of Kenya are looking up to you, and the people of Kenya are hoping that you bring some guidance and some hope to the lives of those who feel quite disillusioned after all the events that have continuously been happening over the course of the different electoral periods. It is my distinguished honor to invite Professor Makau Mutua to address this plenary. Karibu sana.
Thank you so much, Faith. It's a great pleasure for me to be here in this august gathering. It's my first time actually to attend this conference. And I just want to say, first of all, that I've taught law for more than 30 years. And when I wake up in the morning, I always ask myself whether this is a noble profession. That is because of the complexity of the things that lawyers do in society. But just being here for the last 3 days, I can affirm that this is a noble profession. You've all been very inspiring to everyone, including to me. And I just want to say to Faith Odhiambo that, you lead welcome Governor Somak. I wanted to say that to Faith, you lead not just with your head, but you lead with your heart. And while I do not want to essentialize women leadership, I think there is a way in which women perform governance that tends to be inclusive and I believe that your tenure will be much missed. I wanted to just take a few minutes today to speak about some simple truths about democracy, about constitutionalism, and about the rule of law. And I just want to say that abstract autonomy, and the other one is formal equality. If you look at the logic, the normative logic of our 2010 Constitution, which is normative logic of really all democratic constitutions, you will see that those two tenets form the basis, the fulcrum, the substance of that document. And if you remove those two tenets, the very idea of democracy itself collapses. And I wanted to talk about two other tenets which are more normative, and that is equal protection and anti-discrimination. Again, if you remove those two normative tenets, the entire edifice of democracy collapses. But I wanted to say that democracy is a very complex governance system, and its performance is even more complex. And I want to say that since 2010, we have been trying in this country to understand how to perform democracy, both as citizens and as the three arms of government. And I say that we've been trying to perform democracy, mostly failing, but sometimes succeeding. And so I've been asking myself, why is it that we have been mostly failing in our task of performing the processes of democracy? And the one thing I'm going to say is controversial, but I think it is true. And that is that democracy as we know it today, liberal democracy that is not native to our time. It is not native to our time. It's a normative system that we are trying to learn. And I would suggest that our humility is required as we try to learn this very complex system of governance. Because you can even see in some very serious countries, some established political democracies around the globe, you can see a lot of backsliding. Countries that have been democracies for more than 300 years. And this shows you how complex the system is. And so I wanted to talk in particular about the culture of democracy in these simple truths. And the first one that I could think of was a metaphor for the doctrine of separation of powers and the doctrine of the checks and balances that are integral, in fact essential to democracy. And I thought I would use this metaphor of the knee to describe this particular system. The knee is like a tripod. It has the thigh bone, it has a leg bone, and there's a cartilage. The knee functions because of the healthy cartilage that pushes and enables its movement. If you remove the cartilage, the knee collapses and becomes dysfunctional. In the same way, in my view, the doctrine of separation of powers functions because of norms, not because of law. Because of norms, not because of black letter law. The black letter law itself is, of course, distilled from the norm. But the norm itself is the basis of the law. And so therefore, what we should, all of us, be trying to pay attention to, most of all, although we are lawyers, is not really the black letter law, but the norm on which the black letter law is based. Because the black letter law, as we all know, can be an ass. When they say, the law is an ass, that's what we're talking about. The norm is the substance. The law may give you justice, but the norm will always give you justice. The law may give you justice, but the norm will give you justice. Because justice itself is a norm. And so therefore systems work not because there are laws. That is not why systems work. Systems work because the norms are embedded in the political and social culture of a people and of a nation. The rhythms and the terms of democracy require the socialization of those norms of governance that I'm talking about. The socialization of norms, not the socialization of the black letter law. Now, yesterday the Chief Justice was here and she talked at length about the relationship between the three arms of government. And I was tempted to say this, that the democratic language of our 2010 Constitution needs to be imbibed by these three branches of government. In my view, the judiciary is like a cartilage that stands or sits between the executive and the legislature. If the judiciary is to be successful in executing its mandate of being the guardian of fidelity to the rule of law, it means that the judiciary must adhere to an interpretation of the black letter law that recognizes that it is one of the three arms of government and that its success depends upon a respectful working relationship with the two other arms of government. Because, there is just a certain belief that the judiciary is not part of the government. The judiciary is part of the government. And so, whereas the executive in the 2010 Constitution is regarded as the first among equals, in my view, the executive must also listen to the predicates and to the wisdom of our judiciary. I want to say that the judiciary itself, in carrying out this mandate, must also understand the political doctrine question. And here, I am not talking about asking the judiciary to retract its mandate or kowtow to the executive. No, I'm simply asking the judiciary to realize that this system works best when there is give and take between the three arms of government. Give and take. If you look, for example, at what is happening in the United States, what you are going to see is a system of government that is democratic, but that is in crisis. And why is that system in crisis? That system is in crisis because you have an administration in power that has forgotten the relationship between the normative edifice of democracy and the black letter law. I think the realization is that not everything can be legislated. And when you legislate, in fact, you are failing in the practice of democracy. So I want to say that for us in Kenya, for our democracy to work, and for us to continue to deepen and strengthen our democracy, we must be very intentional in creating what I have called an elite consensus. An elite consensus that accepts the normative basis of democracy, the normative basis of the concept of the rule of law, the normative concepts of equal protection. I also want to say that elites in our country must always understand that they stand on the sovereignty of the people, and that the states and the government of our country endures because of that trust that the people give it. If you remove that element of the trust by the people in their government, then you cannot ensure the perpetual existence of the state. I just want to say that in the last several weeks, we have been discussing within the state. Some of the issues that have arisen since last year because of a sudden sense of restlessness in this country, and which boiled over on June 25th last year and continues to boil over until Sabasaba this year. As you all know, a lot of lives were lost, and I think I do not tell you a secret when I say that there is a measure of a trust deficit between the government and the people of this country. And one of the things I think that we have to do, not just the government, but also the people of this country, is to engage in a process of national healing. And someone has said, several times that there's only one country called Kenya, that if it collapses, that we will have no place to go. I just want to say that it's a part of that process of national healing. I have taken on the mandate to effect a mechanism for the compensation of victims of riots and protests. And I want to say that this is something that has not happened in our country in a way in which I perceive it and in a way in which I want to perform it. That the Chief Justice, without equivocation, endorsed this effort as one limb of the process of transitional justice. There are other limbs of this process. I've heard some people say that this is not justice, but I just want to say that is not true. Compensation is a part of justice. But there are other steps that we shall be taking to go forward. And I ask all of you to support us, to counsel us, to give us support and assistance as we go through this process. I thank you very much.
Was the Vice President and Minister for Home Affairs between January 2008 and April 2013. He has received several honors and awards. The Voice Achievers Award, conferred the prestigious rank of Senior Counsel by Rights in 2020, is the African Dignitary Man of the Year feted by We Care for Humanity organization, has an honorary degree in agriculture from Nanjing University, Doctorate of Letters Honoris Causa from the Kenyatta University, Doctorate of Divinity from the Latin University of Theology, and is the Elder of the Golden Heart, the second highest national award in Kenya. He's feted as being a visionary leader with over 4 decades of experience in government, public service, and policy making, proven track record of implementing legal changes, promoting national unity, and advancing long-term social and economic development, international peace, and rule of law. He's known for his work in human rights, both locally, regionally, and internationally, recognized internationally for defending human rights and promoting peace, conflict resolution through diplomacy. A pioneer in environmental conservation and gender equity, committed to upholding the rule of law and establishing a successful, inclusive, and egalitarian Kenyan nation. He's also known recently for appearing in several cases representing the Gen Zs and also fighting to uphold the rule of law. Please, let's put our hands together for Senior Handbook. If you remember, he appeared also in a sitcom. He has many talents. Very good.
Thank you. Wow. Madam President, distinguished friends on this side, and learned friends. Madam President, just for the record, it is an honor for me to be here as your advocate number 1056 of 1979. I actually missed being admitted in 1978 because I had to go for some postgraduate work in Cyprus. Otherwise, it would perhaps have given further meaning to what I'm just about to say. I've had my practicing certificate for the last 46 years, including when I served as our beloved country's 10th Vice President between 2008 and 2013. So there's been no break, even as Vice President. I just took out. And I want to advise those of us in public service, please don't give up your practice. That is your fallback position. If you become, even if you become like my friend Macau, some advisor. My learned friends, this annual conference is themed Protecting Constitutionalism and the Rule of Law and Governance. It's not just timely. It is, in my opinion, the most consequential discussion of our time. Yesterday, Chief Justice Martha Koome, Madam President Faith Odhiambo, Professor Migaya Ketch delivered such powerful speeches that should have shaken anyone listening in this room and Stream B, as well as those watching from the outside, including the current leadership, in my opinion. Following Chief Justice's Koome's observation that the work we do as a position is constitutional, yet the work we do is actually not in the Constitution. Allow me to contribute to this conversation. Learned friends, 2024-2025 is a case study of state repression, unlike anything experienced in our country's 22 to 62 years of independence. And please prepare yourselves to hear things you have not heard before from this podium, because I'm just exercising my role as Madam Chief Justice Koome say, the opposition. And we call it, we just have to say it as it is for the sake of this wonderful nation. The open daylight abductions, the public beatings and maiming of young Kenyans innocently protested the growth of Haiti-style militia groups with caches of small arms and light weapons, terrorizing Kenyans and looting businesses under the police supervision and protection. This reads like a blockbuster film. However, it is hardly an imaginative or artistic script that awaits performers to bring it to life on our screens. This is the current state of the nation, in which repression, tyranny, and flagrant contempt for the rule of law threaten to pervade and infect the country's soul. Members of the bar receive calls every day and night from shocked and frantic relatives looking for abducted Kenyans, most of whom are under 30. Their crime was using social media to openly voice their shock, their rage, and incredulity of a renegade state, because they exercise the fundamental liberties guaranteed under Constitution 2010, and more specifically, as you all know, Article 37 of the Constitution. They are regarded like terrorists and charged under the Prevention of Terrorism Act, POTA, and persecuted like criminals. Not long ago, a few young Kenyans came to my office and spent time narrating their traumatic experiences with abduction and torture to me. Despite what they went through, the physical and mental torture each of them endured, and their fears that death was just a minute away, they all spoke confidently about one thing: their faith in our Constitution to rescue not only them, but also the others who are in cages with them. It is that faith in the sanctity and supremacy of our Constitution that protects Kenya from becoming a failed state. Whether it's a state capture of parliament and of state agencies, when elements of the church and sections of the opposition have been compromised to look the other way, it is you, the Law Society of Kenya, who have held fast. You have become a beacon of conscience for the country in such perilous times. You responded to distress calls at all hours and volunteered your services. You, Madam President, would even place a call saying, we need a senior counsel to at least appear in Melemani, because we have to be there to stand with you. It will be said from this podium that you have performed well. But in my honest opinion, you have exceeded everybody's expectation. You and your able team. Never mind if your vice chair was seen campaigning here. Please forgive him. I've appeared with Kabata in committee, that prison, the anti-terrorism court, just next to committee maximum prison, in order to give these young Kenyans, putting them fear of their lives, so they will never again want to take into consideration their liberties under the Constitution. As united opposition, we have also taken firm and decisive action because we're saying enough is enough. I heard President Ruto say enough is enough in another context. I want to tell you that one of the things that President Ruto has done is to call for a joint PG, parliamentary group meeting, between ODM and UDA. It is within their right to do so. But let them be distant. If indeed I see the Secretary General of ODM here, Senator Sifuna. If indeed you attend that meeting at State House on Monday, for the love of this country, and good order, and governance, and the supremacy of our institutions. We just had Professor Macau give a very good lecture on the separation of powers. And I've actually said Parliament itself is under state capture. Indeed, the fruition of this will happen on Monday, and I want to suggest to Senator Sifuna that if that happens, joint PG of UDA and ODM, the following day in Parliament, Honorable Junet Mohammed, who is supposed to represent me in Parliament as the majority leader, should immediately vacate and move now, so there'll be good order, so that they now move and join together, so we'll know that the opposition, the joint opposition now will have the responsibility to have a new team. We are very able young legislators, like Babu Wino, who was just in here. Because of these regimes, as Chief Justice said correctly yesterday, you cannot criminalize human rights. Defenders, we all know, under Article 20 of the Constitution, since 1920 of the Constitution, we imported, and this is part of our domestic law, those treaties that Kenya has been signatory to, and all those human rights treaties. Therefore, you cannot run away and pretend you're an island, when indeed, under Constitution 20 yourself, and you have sworn to uphold the Constitution as by law established. Therefore, these international treaties on human rights are part of our domestic law. We are then bound by the same. Because of this regime's inability to defend and protect rights and constitutional values, and guided by our Constitution, particularly Article 1, we established the People's Restorative Justice Commission on June 25th. Professor Macau, please hear me, my brother. We did that. This people-led initiative, chaired by Speaker Emeritus Jamie Muturi and Commissioners Dan Manzo, Fred Ogola, Asha Bashir, and Nerima Wako, has been working around the clock to restore dignity, rebuild lives, families, communities, and society, and hold perpetrators accountable for crimes against humanity. The opposition's initiative, that is already getting international recognition, is starkly different from the recently announced task force by President Ruto and Raila Odinga. The question we and majority of Kenyans are asking is, how can the perpetrators who gave the shoot to kill and the shoot in the leg decree be the judges in their own already admitted crimes? By compensating, and yeah, Professor Macau, compensate, yes, we are with you on that because it's important. But you cannot compensate a life of a Kenyan. One Kenyan life lost is one too many, and we cannot accept. Going forward, all Kenyans arrested and detained during the Maandamano protests and Sabasaba Day demonstrations must be released immediately. When ODPP have been here, I've just shared that with you. The Director of Public Prosecution, so happy you're here to hear me say this. As your colleague in the profession, we are saying that all these demonstrators, we call them actually prisoners of conscience. They have to be released immediately and unconditionally. A lot of them are out on bail terms. Thank you again, Madam President. We work very hard. And all those advocates who gave their pro bono services to at least have these young men and women go back to their parents, we really congratulate you. This includes all those who are dragged through the anti-terrorism court and treated like terrorists. But we know the purpose, Parliament's intention in enacting, I think in 2012 or 2015, Porter Prevention of Terrorism Act. They didn't imagine. They were looking at transnational criminals like Al-Qaeda and Al-Shabaab. Now you get these young Kenyans and you take them there and you really put the fear of God in there. I can tell you end up hardening them, and I can tell you they're very committed to making sure that their country is given back to them. Remember the Gen Zs. Friends, today more than ever, I'm reminded of Brutus' words to Cassius in William Shakespeare's play Julius Caesar Act 4. And I paraphrase, I think I will just quote it because it's so opportune, even as we look at the Indian Ocean from this place. It's a beautiful place. I don't know how many of us know that our sea, our coastline, is one of the best anywhere in the world. I can tell you the southern sea, for example, the Diani area, amazing beauty. But therefore, remind you, under Julius Caesar, Act 4, that there is a tide in the affairs of men, which taken with the flood, leads them to fortune, omitted, all the voyage of their life is bound in shallows and in miseries. I would actually want to add, to conclude that, and on such a full sea, that's what we are, Kenya, on such a full sea, are we now afloat. And we must take the current when it serves, or lose our ventures, is an issue. End of quote. Time, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, learned friends, is extremely of the essence. It is important, and we have to come to the rescue of this nation from a regime actively determined to suspend our hard-fought constitution. The law is not just an instrument of order, it is a covenant of justice. If we are not vigilant, our constitution shall be eroded and Kenya's present and future will be undermined. Kenya cannot succeed without a vigilant and courageous legal profession. And you, the defenders of the law, cannot succeed without a principled political class willing to defend our independence. If we lose the law, we lose the nation. This is a challenge of the most consequential discussion of our time. Therefore, our presence in Diani, this particular time, Professor Makao has just said it's the first time he ever attended. He's a wonderful friend of mine, and I'm giving him the chance. Sometimes you got just to stand up. When you look to talk of elite consensus, what you are telling Kenyans to do is, it is time to eat together. It is time to plan our resources. Listening to Dr. Adesina today, one of the most distinguished African, not just academicians, but a person who has taken into this continent at heart. I know that his term comes to an end on 1st of September, and the task of the next president of ADP will go to Mauritania. I've just come from Abidjan, and I've seen some of the wonderful work the African Development Bank has been able to do. But when it comes to procurement, look at the slow pace of what is happening between Vanga, for example, from Bagamoyo in Tanzania to Malindi, end up your tour of duty on a very high note. Because as learned colleagues, we need to hear this kind of truth. That the Thika Superhighway, for example, people believe it was done by the Chinese, but I was there when Professor Adesina and President Kibaki launched the Thika Superhighway, and the money came from the African Development Bank. But who were the contractors, and how are they contracted? Even now, what is happening between Bagamoyo and Malindi? Very slow pace of implementation. We have to rise together. I know myself, I have no doubt in my mind that this audience that I've been part of since the last 2 days is the most important audience. If the Law Society of Kenya drops a ball, we have no country. Therefore, faith, continue to keep faith and hope. And let us continue to hope and fight. It is going to be the kind of fight you never know. For example, today, the High Court, and I really actually think the last line of defense, our courts of justice, Justice Lenaula, who even one time talked about interference with e-filing. Can you imagine? During the impeachment, my final remark, when President Ruto says that members of parliament have been asking for bribes from other arms of government, that is the consequence you suffer as a colleague. If you get compromised, you get to a place where you are now misused. Who is it to pay in excess of 10 million shillings per MP, per senator, to impeach Deputy President Gachagua. Was that corruption or was it not corruption? That is the truth. So when you have the perpetrators talking as if they are speaking for the Holy Land, then you wonder. You wonder. We continue to call them out and we tell them this is not the time to fear anybody. I'm telling you, if you take a breath, as Law Society of Kenya, we have no country. But if we stand together, the 1,700 who registered to be here, they might end up talking one time more than other people. I thank you. I thank you so much.
Our next speaker is the Honorable Super Senator of Nairobi County, CPS. He started his political career in 2013 and has steadily grown to become the Senator of Nairobi City after being elected in 2022 general elections. The committee, he has already sponsored several bills in Parliament, namely the Basic Education Amendment Bill of 2024, co-sponsored with Honorable Anthony Oluoch of Mathare constituency, the Sports Amendment Bill 2023, the Energy Amendment Bill 2023, giving significant contributions to important national and local legislation and policies. The Honorable Sifuna is a career lawyer, a credible public servant with a track record of inspiring change through his legislation, representation, and oversight. He has so many accolades, but I can say without a doubt he's remembered in LSK for being instrumental to change at the Law Society through the Okoa LSK lobby, which brought power, accountability, and surplus back to the membership. He's been an avid supporter of the Law Society of Kenya. I can say actively in my life in council, he has always come through and he has always been quite supportive. And so it's my great honor to invite supporter of the Gen Zs, injector of injectors, a person who speaks truth to power with humor, wit, and great charm. I invite you, Honorable Sifuna.
Thank you, Your Excellency, Madam President of the Law Society of Kenya. All protocols observed. I know it's lunch hour, but I'll be very brief. My name is Edwin Sifuna. I am the Senator of Nairobi, the Deputy Whip of the Minority, still Honorable Kalonzo. And many of you know me as the SG of ODM. Now, I had a choice. I had a choice to attend that jamboree in Homa Bay or to join you here in Diani to discuss protecting constitutionalism, rule of law, and to demand accountability from those in power. I want to say here that I am a proud member of the Law Society of Kenya. As you've been told, my first time being elected was as a member of the Council of the Law Society of Kenya. Those of you who want to join politics, you will always hear people throw snide remarks and saying, this one cannot even be elected as a chair of a cattle league. So, your first time is very important to demonstrate to people that you can actually be elected to anything. And that is the reason why I am always happy to join you. And as Honorable Kalonzo has said again, you need to maintain some nexus between yourself and your profession, because you never know. The way some of the young people are talking in 2027, all of us might find ourselves back home and we would have to find something else to do. I want to commend the leadership of the Law Society of Kenya, led by Madam Faith. You have stood in the gap for the people of Kenya. You have stood in the gap for those of us who may have failed the people of Kenya by applicating some of the roles that were expected for us to execute. So, for standing for the rule of law, the Constitution, all of those things, and for defending the rights of Kenyans, we salute you, not just as the President, but the entire society led by our Council. Now, yesterday I came in and there was a conversation here that was going on. I found the Attorney General addressing this gathering, and she suggested that what leaders need more is prayer. I am not discounting the value of prayer, but if you are put in a position of advice, the most critical thing you need to do for your leadership is to give them the proper advice. These council members here are supposed to give good and proper advice to the President of the Law Society of Kenya. The Attorney General is supposed to give proper advice to the President. And the mamas you are hearing in the hall is because many of us at the back there were shouting, you are preaching to the choir. The people who need that advice are not these lawyers. We know what the law is. We know what anticipatory bail means. The person you are supposed to be speaking to is your boss, because he's the one who doesn't know what anticipatory bail is. So, I hope she understands. She understands the concern that we have as a people, as lawyers, with everything that has been done by this administration to claw back on the freedoms and gains of the people. She spoke about anticipatory bail. She even tried to suggest, I don't know which era her mind slips to, that there were some, offenses that were not bailable. That is something we left back many years ago. And I hope she would also address herself to this thing of Kamata Fridays and pre-trial detention applications by the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution here, which is being used by the Director of Public Prosecution. My understanding of your role, I think it is Article 157, that in the execution of your duties under the Constitution, you must have regard to two things: the public interest in the administration of justice and the need to prevent and or avoid abuse of the legal process. Now, when you sit in your office approving these charge sheets that are being manufactured in the police stations, do you ever lend your mind to your responsibility to us as the people who are being charged with some of these offenses that Honorable Kalonzo has spoken about? The Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, and I will say this without blinking, is a weak link in the fight against arms of power in this country. You have a responsibility, when you are approving that charge sheet, to remember that it is you to prevent abuse of power and process in this country. So, we are here to call you out as well and tell you we are not very happy. The Chief Justice of this Republic gave us a history of these rights. You know, people always forget that everything that has been put in the Constitution is drawn out of the experience of Kenyans with previous regimes. There is an experience to it. In fact, I always refer people to the CKRC report. You will understand the why. Why are these things framed in the manner that they are framed in the current Constitution? So, I always go back. If you want to understand the frame of mind of Kenyans, why they say the DPP needs to also prevent abuse of process, because there was a prosecutor called Bernard Chunga. Everybody remembers Bernard Chunga. Maybe the other ones may not remember. Yeah. So, there is a historical context to some of these things. And the CJ took us through that history. And she spoke about corruption as well. And she asked, who is this that is bringing corruption to the judiciary? We in Parliament have also been accused that we are rent seekers, that we go to ask people for money. I want the President to tell this country, who are these people who go and ask his cabinet secretaries for money? They are his cabinet secretaries. Who are these people that ask governors for money? Let them tell us. Let them tell us. To make blanket accusations, and I want to say this. You see,
personally, like Sifuna, personally as Sifuna, I had taken a public position on Gachagua way prior to the impeachment. Are you telling me you paid me to do something I already wanted to do? Had I not gone on record objecting to some of the things that were coming from the pulpit of the Deputy President? I had said it. Was I going to demand that you pay me to impeach Gachagua? So, Honorable Kalonzo, some of these things that people say, they are besmirching the entire house. If somebody has come to ask you for money, say Sifuna asked me for money. There's a cabinet secretary who claims when they come to the Senate that somehow we ask them for money to be nice to them. I am a member of the Public Accounts Committee. Our proceedings are live. Those of you who have watched those proceedings, do you see a nice Sifuna? Is that what they pay me to do? Anyway, it's a difficult conversation, but we need to all agree that some of the people who are pointing fingers are the worst possible auctioneers in this country. In fact, their names are synonymous with corruption. If you ask a small child in this country what they know about that person, they tell you that is a thief. And then they are the ones standing and telling us, oh, Parliament is corrupt. All of those committees in Parliament, except two, all of those committees in Parliament are headed by members of his party, the President's party. All of them. Agriculture, lands, whatever it is. So, he should have a PG with his team first of all, before he calls ODM members to go for PGs, join PGs. You know, you will allow me to just speak because when Faith asked me to come to this conference, I asked her what would be my expectation as a guest here. I can see other people came prepared with speeches. The president told me, Sifuna just speak from the heart. And I asked her, are you sure? Are you sure that you want me to speak from the heart? But she has allowed me to do that. I just want to make some concluding remarks about some of the things that have been said today. First of all, Dr. Okello, I admire his courage. And I can assure you, Dr. Okello, that you will see a few Subarus. Because these are people who have very thin skin. Very thin skin. These are not guys who you will see. Dr. Okello works in the legal office in the Senate. You will see a disciplinary next week. Because the people we work around, they have such thin skin, they cannot take criticism. But today, I want to applaud his courage because he has spoken about a broken system and a broken promises. When we look at the, you see, for me, the solution is very simple. Kenyans must go back to ask themselves, what sort of government did we want? What sort of government did we want? And I've made it clear that all these people who talk about shiny things, railways from here to Malaba, how many markets we are constructing, those are not the people we are looking for. The aspirations of Kenyans as far as government is concerned will be found in the preamble of the Constitution. It talks about an aspiration by all Kenyans for a government based on the essential values of human rights, equality, freedom, democracy, social justice, and rule of law. So all of these people who are claiming they want form government in 2027, if you do not fit that mold of those 6 essential values, please, we are not what we are looking for. Are we together? Yes. There is already a manifesto. There is already a blueprint for the government we want to establish. No roads, no markets, freedom, respect for humanity, for human rights, respect for democracy, social justice and rule of law. Honorable Kalonzo, I am a believer in separation of powers. I have refused to go to the seat of the executive, and this is one of the criticisms I hope the CJ will share. One of my criticisms of her is that sometimes she forgets that she is a head of an institution, and you must protect the image of that institution. Don't allow yourself, even perception, don't allow the perception that you are subservient to the head of state. Don't go to his house. That's what I'm saying. Don't go to his house. If you have to meet as a head of government, choose a place where that physical separation, Honorable Kalonzo, between the two arms of government can be maintained. And that is the reason why Sifuna does not go to State House. And by the way, constitutionally, I am the supervisor of the executive. They come to me, I don't go to them. I am a believer in the rule of law, and I will tell you a story. Recently, there was a governor who was brought before the Senate for impeachment. If you look at those impeachment charges, all of them originated from the County Public Accounts Committee where I sit. All of them, including the hiring of more than 60 advisors and so on and so forth. They originated from a session of the County Public Accounts Committee. I was in that session. So, I believe in those charges. But, there is a High Court sitting somewhere in, I think it was Mary, that has said all the proceedings in the county assembly are null and void. It's not that I don't believe in the charges, but I am a lawyer. I am an advocate. I swore an oath. In fact, the judge in that case was so gracious as to say they were not going to stop the proceedings in the Senate. They are leaving it to us to exercise our minds on the space of constitutional institutions and the respect for the rule of law. What do you think Sifuna does? Yes. We say you can argue whether the order is flawed, and I saw some of my senior colleagues in the profession coming and telling us that there are actually orders that we can ignore. Can you believe it? Can you believe it? So, despite my feelings about the charges and the guy generally, I have a responsibility because some of us take oaths very seriously. We took an oath to defend this constitution. And I agree with those of you who are saying we need to go back and reclaim our country. Now, let me conclude. First of all, Justice Lenaola, I think, has painted the true picture of this country, who we are. I have had some political leaders claim that, we are in Africa, and that in Africa, it is very difficult to remove a sitting president who is looking for his second term. He forgets there are people like Lenaola who made history by annulling a presidential election. Kenya is not like the rest of Africa. We are not the rest of Africa where these things happen. You understand? So, don't tell us about Uganda. Sure. Are we Uganda, man? Are you saying that? With all due respect to my friends from Uganda, we are not Uganda. So, Justice Lenaola and your team, for that courage to demonstrate that Kenya can be different. Kenya can be different. We don't have to be like the other African countries. We want to remind these people that on the day that Kenyans speak, all this bravado you see, Senior Counsel Gideon Mugai, the good thing with me, I have the benefit of being in the exact same position that the people are in power, who are in power now, are in. We were the ones making all those statements of bravado, deep state, and putting up brave faces saying, oh, tutakuja tufagie gosho moja, wacha azunguke, sisi tukiingia mambo itakuwa tofauti. They are in the exact same position. We have been there, saying, oh, this is people are deep state. What the experience of 2022 taught me is that you, as the voters, are more powerful than these people actually imagine. You are more powerful. And never see that power. Never see that power. I have every confidence that when Kenyans express themselves, there is nobody who is going to be able to overturn the will of the people. Lastly, before we go, we're being told, Honorable Kalonzo, we must be brave, we must be bold. Saving a nation, this is like an existential fight for the very soul of this country. Saving a nation is not an easy task. We must be bold. The very people who ascended to power on the back of a slogan, they were running around just saying hustler. Nobody ever understood what hustler means. Those same people are saying we cannot do the very same and go on a slogan. One word. Say it yourself. Asante sana.
Honorable Senator of Nairobi, you must withdraw. I know the temperatures have risen, but now it's time for the yellow pages, but also a surprise. The Honorable Governor of Mombasa deemed it that it's quite important to come and see us and speak to us as members of the bar. He wants to give us a bit of advertising to entice us why this convening should move to his county. The fact that he's come here is already